I didn't expect her to open the door herself. No warning, no prelude, just the faint click, the smell of rain on her skin, and the kind of silence that rearranges your heartbeat. She looked the same as always, yet nothing about her felt casual. Hair tied back but loose at the edges, sleeves rolled, a quiet steadiness in the way she stood. My friend's sister, Elena, 45, maybe 46 now. I hadn't seen her in months. She had that calm, unhurried grace people earn only after breaking a few times. "Didn't think you'd actually come," she said, smiling just enough to make it unclear whether she meant it as a tease or a warning. "I wasn't sure if I should," I said, stepping inside before I could change my mind. Her living room was dim, just the soft yellow from a lamp spilling over the couch. The air smelled faintly of citrus and old books. She moved past me, close enough that her shoulder brushed mine, accidental or not. There's something about the way older people carry quiet. It isn't emptiness, it's memory. Every pause has history in it. Elena's silences filled the room more than words could. She glanced over her shoulder. "You've changed. Taller, or maybe just more sure of yourself. Or you're just shorter," I said. That earned a laugh, small, genuine, the kind that made you want to keep earning it. For a while, we talked about nothing. The weather. My job. Her brother, the friend who'd left town months ago. But between the pauses, something unspoken settled in. A kind of warmth that kept flickering every time our eyes met too long. She leaned on the counter, fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "You always find a way to stay in my mind," she said suddenly, almost like she didn't mean to say it out loud. The words hung there, soft but undeniable. I didn't answer. I didn't know how to. The refrigerator hummed. The rain outside thickened. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, waiting for me to either look away or say something that would make the air easier to breathe. I did neither. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she said, voice lower now. "Like what?" "Like you're remembering something that never happened." Her smile wavered, but she didn't move back. I could see the small scar near her collarbone, the way her pulse shifted just enough to betray her calm. My hand tightened around the mug I wasn't drinking from. This wasn't supposed to be anything. Just a visit. Just catching up. But the space between us felt smaller than reason, and larger than time. She looked down, then back at me. "You were always too quiet. Makes people wonder what you're thinking." "Maybe I just noticed things," I said. Her lips curved slightly. "Then tell me what you notice now." I opened my mouth, but before I could answer, the sound of a door unlocking broke through the moment, a metallic snap from the hallway. Elena froze. Her eyes flicked toward the sound, then back to me, a quick, silent plea for composure. "Stay here," she whispered. And just like that, the warmth between us fractured, replaced by the cold awareness of where we stood, who we were, and what we shouldn't have been feeling. But as she moved toward the door, I couldn't stop watching the space where her hand had almost reached for mine. It wasn't her husband at the door. Just a neighbor, asking about mail. Still, the way Elena's shoulders eased when she shut it told me how quickly a secret can bloom, even when there's no one to keep it from. After that night, I found excuses to stop by again. Returning a book, checking on her brother's old guitar, pretending there was something I'd forgotten. She always let me in, always with that small, knowing smile that said she wasn't fooled. Elena had been a teacher once. Left it after her divorce. "Too much noise," she'd said, though I think it was too much silence afterward that really drove her out. She filled her days now with things that didn't ask much from her: watercolor classes, long walks, reading the same pages twice. I think she liked the way I listened, the way I didn't try to fix her sentences. One afternoon, she was painting by the window when I stopped by. Her hair was pinned loosely, a few strands brushing her cheek. "You show up like sunlight," she said softly, eyes still on the paper. "Unexpected. Hard to ignore." I sat across from her, pretending to look at the half-finished landscape. "Maybe I just missed the quiet here." "Quiet's dangerous," she said, glancing at me then. "Lets you hear too much of yourself." For a while neither of us spoke. Just the sound of her brush in the water, my pulse somewhere too close to my throat. The air between us felt different, heavier. Her knee brushed mine beneath the table, and neither of us moved it away. She broke the silence first. You know, when you were younger, you couldn't even look me in the eye. I smiled faintly. Now I can't seem to stop. That earned a quiet laugh, but she looked away fast, like the words had landed somewhere too close. You shouldn't say things like that. I didn't mean to. I know, she said. That's what makes it worse. Her voice trembled slightly on the last word, and I saw the wall she'd built, careful, fragile, meant to keep both of us from crossing something we already had. She stood up, setting her brush down, wiping her hands on a towel that was already stained with color. Then, without looking at me, she said, You remind me of someone I used to love. Someone who made everything feel possible. There was a pause, long enough for me to feel it in my chest. What happened to him? She met my eyes, and there it was, that quiet sadness she never spoke about. He stopped trying. The room was too small for everything unsaid between us. She stepped closer, just enough for her breath to touch my neck when she leaned past me to pick something off the table. Paint, she murmured, her fingers brushing my shoulder to wipe a streak that wasn't really there. The touch stayed longer than it should have. I didn't move. Neither did she. When she finally stepped back, her voice was barely a whisper. You should go before I forget what's right. But as I turned toward the door, she caught my wrist, only for a second, and then let go, like she'd realized too late what she'd done. The warmth from her touch lingered, long after I left. The next time I saw Elena, it wasn't planned. I'd stopped by to drop off her brother's camera, one I'd borrowed weeks ago. She opened the door in a soft gray sweater, sleeves pulled over her hands, hair damp from the shower. The air between us shifted instantly, that mix of familiarity and danger that neither of us wanted to name. You could have called, she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I almost did, I answered. Then I didn't. Her smile flickered, something between fondness and warning. That sounds like you. Inside, her house felt warmer than usual. Coffee half finished on the counter. A record playing low, the kind of song that feels like it's remembering something for you. I was just cleaning up, she said, gesturing vaguely toward the living room. If you'd come 10 minutes earlier, would it have mattered? She paused, looking at me like the answer might cost too much to say. Maybe, she said finally. We stood there, the quiet stretching. She reached for the camera, fingers brushing mine, a small, electric contact that lasted half a second too long. Neither of us breathed. And then, a knock. Sharp, sudden, wrong. Elena's eyes widened. It's your friend, she whispered, glancing toward the front window. Her brother. I stepped back fast, heart pounding, but she caught my wrist and pulled me toward the hallway. Go, go, she hissed, half laughing, half panicked. We ended up in the narrow kitchen alcove, backs against the wall, her hands still gripping mine. The sound of her brother's voice came through the door, casual, easy. Elena? You home? Her breath was uneven. I could smell her shampoo, something clean, citrusy, human. She looked up at me, eyes flicking from my mouth to my eyes and back again. Stay quiet, she mouthed. He knocked again. She hesitated, then let go of my hand, smoothing her sweater like it might erase the closeness. I watched her go to the door, pretending to be calm. My pulse didn't listen. From where I stood, I could see her through the hallway mirror, her posture, her forced ease, the slight tremor when she laughed at something her brother said. They talked for a few minutes. The whole time, I stayed still, every second stretching longer than the last. Finally, the door closed. Silence. I stepped out, trying to breathe. She leaned against the wall, eyes shut, exhaling like she'd been holding her breath since I arrived. That, she started, then stopped, shaking her head. This is getting too close. Too close to what? Her eyes met mine. You know. I took a step toward her. Then why aren't you stopping it? She didn't answer. The record ended with a soft crackle. She reached to turn it off, but I caught her hand. Our fingers stayed locked, suspended between pull and release. You should leave, she whispered, but her voice betrayed her. I know. Neither of us moved. Her eyes flicked toward the window, the world still waiting outside, uncomplicated, unaware. Then she said it, barely audible. Don't make me want this. And yet, as the silence stretched, she didn't let go. It had been weeks since that near disaster. Weeks of pretending nothing had changed. But it had. Every visit, every glance, the air between us had become its own language. She'd offer me coffee. I'd pretend not to notice how her hands shook slightly when she poured it. We never spoke about that afternoon when I hid behind her kitchen wall, her brother just a few feet away. And yet, we both remembered. That night, she texted me first. Can you stop by tomorrow? I need help fixing the light in the study. I didn't ask why she couldn't call someone else. I just went. When I arrived, the house was quiet except for the rain against the windows. She stood near the desk, in a soft cream blouse and jeans, hair down this time. Bulb keeps flickering, she said. I thought maybe. She stopped when she saw my expression. The words died in her throat. I'll take a look, I said, voice rougher than I meant it to be. The light wasn't broken. It just needed to be turned on. I flipped the switch. The warm glow filled the room, spilling over both of us. You fixed it, she murmured, smiling faintly. Guess I didn't really need you. You called anyway. Silence. A small truth between us, impossible to disguise. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, then she stepped closer instead. The scent of her perfume, soft, warm, familiar, reached me before she did. You're too young to understand what this costs, she said quietly. Then explain it. She shook her head. You think it's just about what we want. Her voice faltered. It's what happens after. Her hand brushed my arm, a small movement, but it burned through me. I caught her wrist before she could pull away. She didn't fight it. Elena. The sound of her name seemed to undo her. She leaned in slightly, just enough that her forehead nearly touched my chin. This isn't fair to you, she whispered. I get to decide that. Her breath trembled. You shouldn't look at me that way. Tell me to stop. She didn't. Instead, her fingers found the collar of my shirt, smoothing it like it mattered. The gesture was small, tender, unbearable. I keep thinking, she said softly. If I were 10 years younger. I leaned closer, not touching, but close enough that the world outside could have disappeared. You'd still make me lose my mind. Her laugh came out like a gasp. You shouldn't say things like that. Then stop standing this close. For a long moment, we didn't breathe. Her eyes searched mine, not for reassurance, but for permission to fall apart. And then, thunder. The power flickered. Darkness swallowed the room, except for the faint silver from the rain-lit window. In that half-light, she reached up, her hand brushing against my cheek. Don't, she whispered, but her voice broke halfway through the word. I moved closer, slow, deliberate. She didn't step back. Our faces inches apart, breath against breath, the room trembling around us. Then, a sound. Her phone buzzed on the table. A single vibration. A name flashing on the screen. Her brother. The light came back on, harsh, too real. She turned away fast, one hand pressed to her lips, not from guilt, but from what almost happened. Go, she said, voice unsteady. I didn't. Not right away. Because the space between us had already told the truth, even if neither of us dared to speak it. I didn't see her for a week. No texts. No calls. No light bulb excuses. Just silence. I tried to convince myself it was for the best, that maybe what almost happened had shaken her enough to pull back. But every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was her. It wasn't. Until one evening it was. Can you come by? Just for a minute. The message was short. No punctuation. No explanation. I went anyway. When she opened the door, her expression wasn't soft this time. Her eyes were tired, mouth pressed tight. "We need to talk," she said. The living room lights were dim, but I could see her hands trembling slightly as she folded her arms. "My brother called," she started. "He asked if I'd seen you lately?" I froze. "What did you tell him?" "That you borrowed something. That I'd barely see you." She let out a breath that sounded more like defeat than relief. "But he heard us." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, heard us?" She turned away, pacing. "That night. When you were here. He said I left the line open. I'd called him before you arrived. He heard voices. He heard me say your name." The silence that followed was unbearable. "He didn't say much else," she added. "But his tone." She swallowed. "He knows something's off." I took a step toward her, but she moved back, bumping into the edge of the table. "You shouldn't have come tonight," she said, though her voice betrayed her. "It's already too close." "Elena, don't." She closed her eyes. "You don't understand what this could do." I hesitated. "Then tell me." Her eyes snapped open, glistening under the soft light. "I'm supposed to be the responsible one," she whispered. "The woman who has her life together. Not the one people whisper about. Not the one who—" She stopped herself, voice breaking. I stepped closer, slow, careful. "Who what?" Her jaw tightened, but she didn't move. "Who thinks about you when she shouldn't?" The words hit harder than any confession could. The space between us dissolved. I reached out, not to pull her in, but to steady her. My hand found her arm, the warmth of her skin trembling beneath my fingers. She didn't pull away this time. For a moment, the world outside ceased to exist. Her breathing quickened, shallow and uneven. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered, but the way her hand brushed my chest told a different story. "I thought I could stop it." "You still can," I said softly. Her eyes lifted to mine. "Then why don't I want to?" The question hung there, naked and irreversible. We stood so close that every heartbeat felt shared, every breath stolen. And then, almost as if she'd made her decision, she whispered, "If he asks again, I'll lie." The words changed everything. Because now, it wasn't about what almost happened. It was about what we were both willing to risk to keep it hidden. It was late when I came back. Too late for excuses, too late for pretending. She didn't ask why I was there. She just opened the door, and for a long time, we stood in silence, the kind that hums just before something breaks. The rain had started again, harder this time, drumming against the windows. Her hair was loose, a few strands damp at the ends. She looked tired, but not surprised. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "I know." She didn't move aside, but she didn't close the door either. I could see the flicker of indecision in her eyes, a war between reason and something she'd been denying too long. Finally, she stepped back. "Just for a minute," she murmured. The living room light was off, only the dim glow from the kitchen cutting through the dark. She leaned against the table, her arms crossed as if she could hold herself together that way. "Why did you come?" she asked. "Because I couldn't stop thinking about you." The words came out before I could filter them. She closed her eyes, a faint tremor in her jaw. "You can't say that. It's true. Truth doesn't make it right." "Then why do you look at me like you're hoping I'll say it again?" Her breath caught, audible, fragile. "Because I'm weak," she whispered. "No," I said quietly. "You're human." I stepped closer, and she didn't retreat this time. Our reflections in the window stood closer than we were, ghost versions of ourselves, already crossing the line we hadn't. "Do you ever wonder," I said, "if some things are worth the risk?" Her eyes lifted, searching mine. "Every day," she admitted. The air between us thickened, full of everything we'd been avoiding. I reached up slowly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. My fingers lingered near her temple, tracing the faint line of tension there. Her breath shook. If you don't stop, I won't be able to. I'm not stopping, I whispered. Her eyes softened, surrender and fear tangled in equal measure. Then she moved closer. So close I could feel the warmth of her breath, the small hitch before every inhale. She rested her forehead against my chest, not pulling me in, not yet, just letting the nearness speak for her. My hands found her shoulders, her back trembling beneath my palms. This isn't fair to you, she murmured. I don't care. You will, she said, voice breaking. Someday, you'll look at me and see what this cost. I lifted her chin, slow, careful, the space between us vanishing. Her eyes held mine, wide, steady, no longer running. Say it, she whispered. I don't want to lose you. You already have, she said, but her lips brushed the corner of my mouth as she said it, barely there, just enough to make the world tilt. For a second, everything stopped, the rain, the ache, the noise inside us both. Then she stepped back. Her voice was soft but certain. We can't keep pretending this isn't real. But we also can't let it ruin us. And in that moment, standing in the quiet aftermath of what almost was, we both understood, it wasn't about right or wrong anymore. It was about survival. Morning came quieter than it should have. After that night, I hadn't expected to see her again. But she called, no pretense this time, no excuses about fixing things or borrowed books. Just a simple, steady, "Can you come by?" When I arrived, the air between us felt different. Lighter somehow, though it still carried the weight of everything we'd almost done. She stood by the window, sunlight catching her hair, making her look younger and older all at once. You look tired, I said softly. She smiled faintly. You should see yourself. For a while, we didn't talk. The quiet wasn't strained anymore, it was something else. The kind that only exists when two people have already said what they needed to without words. I kept thinking, she said finally, about that night. So did I. Her eyes met mine, unguarded this time. I'm not proud of how far it went, she said. But I'm not sorry for feeling what I felt. I nodded. Neither am I. She took a step closer, hesitated, then reached for my hand. Her fingers slid into mine, slow, deliberate. The smallest gesture, but it felt like a decision. I spent years, she said quietly, being careful. Always holding back. Always trying to be what people expected. She looked up at me, eyes soft but firm. You reminded me what it feels like to want something that isn't safe. Her thumb brushed the inside of my wrist, just once. And? I asked. She exhaled, smiling through the ache. And I think maybe that's okay. We sat down on the couch, close, but not tangled. Just enough to feel her warmth beside me. She leaned back, resting her head on my shoulder like she'd done it 100 times before. For a long moment neither of us spoke. The world outside moved on, cars passing, a dog barking, a life that would keep existing beyond whatever this was. I turned my head slightly. Her hair brushed my cheek, soft, faintly scented with something familiar, citrus and rain. You know this won't be easy, I said. She smiled without opening her eyes. Easy was never the point. Her hand found mine again, fingers tightening just enough to say stay. So I did. We didn't kiss. We didn't need to. The silence said enough, that the storm had passed, and what remained wasn't forbidden anymore, just fragile and real. She tilted her head, looking up at me. You always find a way to stay in my mind, she said, echoing that first day, but softer now, a memory turned into truth. And you, I said, brushing my thumb along her knuckles, never really left mine. The light shifted across the room, golden, forgiving. For the first time, it felt like something we didn't have to hide.